Imagine just for a second that you are the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. You've got all the data in the world right at your fingertips.
Right, the ultimate dream scenario.
Exactly. I mean, you have dashboards tracking every single customer click, armies of data scientists on payroll, the most advanced AI algorithms money can buy. It feels like this completely guaranteed recipe for success.
Oh, absolutely. The prevailing corporate math right now is basically just, more data plus better algorithms equals superior decisions.
But what if that exact setup, like the dashboards, the algorithms, the absolute obsession with data, is actually a massive blind spot?
Yeah, that's the multi-million-dollar question.
Right. So today's deep dive is grounded in this genuinely fascinating article called Theory First Strategy, Creating Competitive Advantage in the AI Era by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. Our mission today is to really explore why this relentless focus on historical data might actually be blinding organizations to true breakthrough innovation.
It's a huge issue.
It really is. We are going to uncover how something called Theory First Strategy is actually the real secret weapon for the future. So, okay, let's unpack this, because I think a lot of people listening are sitting in organizations that just, well, worship at the altar of big data. Suggesting we ignore it sounds like corporate heresy.
It does sound like heresy, but to put the scale of this data obsession into perspective, there was a 2023 survey by New Vantage Partners. They found that 94% of Fortune 500 companies have invested heavily in big data and AI capabilities.
94%, wow.
Yeah. We are talking about average annual spending exceeding $20 million per company. And the critical problem Dr. Westover points out here is that by relying exclusively on these analytical tools, these massive organizations are systematically optimizing themselves into a state of, well, what he calls competitive stasis.
Competitive stasis, meaning like they are just running in place, but doing it really, really efficiently.
Exactly. The underlying flaw is that data-first approaches treat strategic decision-making strictly as a prediction problem.
Okay, a prediction problem.
Right. The assumption is that if an algorithm can accurately forecast future conditions based on historical patterns, then leadership can just, select the optimal action. But data, by its very definition, describes what has already happened.
Right. It's the past.
Yes. It excels at pattern recognition within existing paradigms, but it cannot map a territory that hasn't been discovered yet.
Relying purely on data for future strategy feels like trying to drive a car on a winding mountain road by only staring into the rearview mirror.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Because you'll drive perfectly where you've already been, but you're going to fly off the cliff at the very first new curve.
Yep, completely.
And there's just staggering evidence of where this rearview mirror approach actually fails. The source brings in this 2023 study by Bernelli. It looked at over 220,000 investment decisions globally in the venture capital space.
Which is an industry literally built on predicting the future.
Exactly. If anyone is supposed to be good at placing bets on the future, it's VCs. But the results of the study are just completely wild.
They really are. The study revealed that venture capital firms adopting data-driven, algorithmic screening methods were significantly less likely to invest in ventures that achieved breakthrough success, like a major IPO.
Wait, really? Less likely?
Yes, we're talking about a 40% drop in the likelihood of backing a massive winner compared to traditional judgment-based firms. The algorithm systematically filtered out the most innovative ventures.
40%. I mean, that is a massive penalty for using the quote-unquote smart AI tools. How does an advanced algorithm actually look at a multi-billion-dollar idea and score it as a failure?
Well, it comes down to how these models calculate probability. When a startup files a novel patent or, say, pursues a genuinely new business model, there is no historical precedent.
Because it's never existed before.
Right. So the algorithm looks for comparable past successes to assign a risk score. And when it finds zero comparables, it flags the venture as extreme risk and filters it out. The AI is doing exactly what it was programmed to do, minimize variance.
But wait, I have to push back here for a second. Because isn't the data-first approach giving us objectively safer decisions? I mean, the algorithm might miss a unicorn startup, sure.
Yeah.
But it also probably filters out a ton of terrible ideas.
Oh, definitely.
So if it minimizes variance and protects the baseline, why is safe a bad thing?
What's fascinating here is that in a static environment, safe is great. But in a dynamic, highly competitive environment, safety is just an illusion.
An illusion.
Yeah, because when an organization optimizes within the current paradigm, they become highly efficient at the status quo. Meanwhile, their competitors might be discovering entirely new paradigms. So that safe approach leads to progressive marginalization.
Oh, man. Like Blockbuster Video mathematically optimizing their late fee revenue models right up until the exact moment Netflix destroyed the concept of physical rentals entirely.
Blockbuster is the classic example. They had incredible data on VHS and DVD rentals. What they lacked was a mechanism to imagine a world where physical media was irrelevant. And if historical data actively filters out breakthrough innovation, we have to look at the cognitive mechanisms behind how we imagine things that don't exist yet.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, the source distinguishes between recognition-based reasoning, which is what data and AI use to find patterns from past experience, and conceptual reasoning, which is the foundation of theory-first thinking.
So instead of predicting based on the past, we are creating based on a theory.
Exactly.
Let's break down how that actually works in the human brain. Because I think people use the word theory pretty loosely,
They do. The author specifically points to abductive reasoning. Most people are familiar with deductive reasoning, where you apply a general rule to a specific case, or inductive reasoning, where you look at past patterns to assume a future trend.
Right, induction is like the standard data science model.
Yes, but abductive reasoning is entirely different. It is the ability to look at an anomaly or a completely new context and generate a plausible theory to explain how value could be created there. It's the cognitive leap that connects unconnected dots.
Okay, this makes me think of the ultimate example of ignoring the data to make an abductive leap, the original iPhone.
Oh, totally.
Because when Steve Jobs was developing it, the market research the hard data suggested consumers were perfectly happy with their existing tactile cell phones and their separate MP3 players.
Nobody was asking for a glass rectangle.
Right. Nobody was mathematically demonstrating demand for a fragile touchscreen that did both. Jobs ignored the data because he had a theory about the future of digital integration and consumer behavior.
And a theory is essentially a conceptual model of how value might be created under conditions that differ from historical experience. Think about the venture capital space again.
Okay.
Specifically, Fred Wilson's famous decision to pass on Airbnb in its early days.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah. Rational, data-driven analysis at the time suggested zero market potential for a peer-to-peer accommodation rental platform. The data was crystal clear. Strangers simply do not rent their homes to strangers.
What? Yeah. The data accurately reflected human behavior up to that exact point in history.
Precisely. And Wilson later reflected on this missed opportunity, admitting his failure wasn't a lack of analytical sophistication. It was a failure of theoretical imagination.
Theoretical imagination.
Yes. He looked at the data of what the world currently was, rather than building a theory about the causal mechanisms the founders could introduce to change consumer trust. He just couldn't envision a future market state that differed from the present data.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate again here.
Go for it.
If we are abandoning the data to imagine entirely new realities, isn't theory first just a corporate fancy way of saying go with your gut or make a wild guess? Because honestly, if I walk into a boardroom tomorrow and say, hey guys, forget our Q3 data, my gut says we should pivot the whole company, I am getting fired on the spot.
Oh, absolutely. And that reaction from leadership would be entirely justified because a gut feeling is not a theory.
Okay, what's the difference?
A true theory-first strategy is a deliberate, explicit framework. It clearly specifies the causal mechanisms linking your actions to a specific outcome in a completely novel context.
Causal mechanisms.
Right. It explains the how and the why specific actions will create value well before the empirical data exists to prove it. It's an articulable logic model, not just a whim or a guess.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if a theory has to be this structured, articulable framework, there must be a way companies actually operationalize this without going bankrupt on wild ideas.
There is.
Let's look at Amazon Web Services, AWS. Today, it runs a massive chunk of the entire internet. But back before it launched, Amazon was just an online bookstore.
Just a retailer, yeah.
There was absolutely zero historical data to suggest that massive enterprise companies would want to buy their back-end cloud infrastructure from a digital bookseller.
None. And if Amazon's leadership had relied on a data-first approach, they would have looked at their retail data, seen absolutely no demand for enterprise computing, and AWS never would have been built.
It would have died in the spreadsheet somewhere.
Exactly. Instead, they developed a rigorous, explicit theory about the future economics of computing. Their theory proposed that variable cost, highly scalable digital infrastructure would eventually become more valuable to organizations than owning and operating their own fixed cost server farms.
And Amazon didn't just throw money at this theory and hope for the best. They have a very specific mechanism for forcing their teams to flesh out the causal mechanisms before a single line of code is written.
Yes, their famous working backwards model.
Right. They require teams to write the public press release and the frequently asked questions document for a theoretical product before it ever gets approved.
The genius of the PR and FAQ document is that it forces the team to clearly articulate the theoretical customer value proposition. You have to explain exactly why the customer cares, how it changes their workflow, and what problem it solves.
And you have to do all that without having any product usage data to lean on. It's like writing the glowing 5-star review of a restaurant before you've even bought the ingredients, signed a lease, or learned to cook. You are forcing yourself to establish the theoretical standard of success first.
That's a great analogy.
And think about how applicable that is for you listening right now. If you are pitching a new internal workflow to your boss, try writing the email announcing its success 6 months from now. What does that email say? That forces you to build the theory of why the workflow matters, rather than just pointing to data showing the old workflow is slow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, shifting to that mindset elevates the entire conversation. An organization stops asking, what does our historical data tell us we should optimize next? And starts asking, what theories are guiding our interpretation of the future? It moves a company from mere optimization into actual creation.
I want to pause here because if you're listening, you might be thinking, great, the takeaway is to throw my data analytics software out the window and just go write press releases all day.
Right, which would be a disaster.
Yeah. But that's not what Dr. Westover's arguing at all. It's not theory versus data. The real magic happens when we explore how they actually coexist and inform each other.
They are entirely complementary. The philosopher Karl Popper discussed this extensively in the context of scientific discovery, and the business application is identical. Theories dictate what data an organization should collect and how to interpret it.
Okay.
And then data provides the empirical feedback that tests, refines, or occasionally disproves those theories.
So you need the theory to tell the data what to actually look for in the first place.
Yes.
The source brings up Netflix here, which is just the perfect case study for this dialogue between theory and data. I mean, Netflix has more granular viewer data than almost anyone on the planet.
Unbelievable amounts of data.
But if they just let a purely algorithmic data-first model write their scripts based on past viewing habits, we just get incredibly boring, generic copies of whatever was popular last year.
Exactly. A purely algorithmic approach to content creation yields an endless loop of incremental variations on past hits. Netflix avoids this by using a theory-first approach to place bets on emerging cultural trends or completely novel storytelling formats.
Like using human abductive reasoning.
Right. They theorize what audiences might want next. Then, they deploy their massive data capabilities to test specific aspects of the execution of those theories.
This is how we got something like the original launch of House of Cards. They didn't have data proving people wanted to watch a whole season of television in one weekend because streaming an entire season at once wasn't really a thing yet.
Right, binge watching was a theory.
Yeah, they had a theory about binge-watching behavior, and they used data to refine the thumbnail images and the recommendation engine to test that theory. Or look at Squid Game. It was completely unconventional.
Totally unprecedented.
An algorithm optimizing for historical U.S. viewing habits never would have greenlit a hyper-violent dystopian South Korean drama.
The theoretical leap creates the space for the novel idea. The data infrastructure validates and scales the execution. Leading companies recognize this dual necessity, and they are actually establishing specialized roles focused purely on theoretical imagination to ensure the data doesn't drown out the theory.
So wait, like a chief theory officer?
Basically, yeah. Take IDEO, the renowned innovation consultancy. They employ specialized researchers in human-centered design whose job isn't tracking current product usage metrics. Their mandate is to build theories about latent, unarticulated human needs.
So they are theorizing about what people will want in future contexts, not what they are clicking on today.
Exactly. We also see this manifesting in how companies allocate employee time. Google's famous 20% time policy operates as a dual-track evaluation process.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, instead of demanding immediate data on market potential or ROI for a new idea, they evaluate an employee's side project based on its theoretical novelty.
And didn't something huge come out of that?
The development of Gmail is the direct result of that exact theoretical evaluation process. At the time, user data suggested the market was completely satisfied with existing low-storage email providers like Hotmail or Yahoo.
Right, people just deleted their emails constantly.
Exactly. But the theory behind Gmail offering massive storage so users never had to delete a message, combined with a search-based interface, was theoretically robust enough to warrant investment despite the lack of initial market data.
Man, building specialized roles at IDEO or carving out 20% time at Google is amazing.
Yeah.
But to truly survive the AI era, this kind of theoretical imagination has to be woven into the very fabric of an organization's culture. You can't just isolate imagination in one quirky department down the hall while everyone else crunches numbers.
You really can't. And the source dedicates significant time to detailing how organizations institutionalize this capability long term. The foundation is cognitive diversity.
Cognitive diversity.
Yes. Homogeneous organizations where everyone has the same background and looks at the same data inevitably default to consensus theories. This just reinforces their existing paradigms. To break that cycle, companies have to force abductive reasoning across disciplines. Procter & Gamble does this through their Connect plus Develop model.
Connect plus develop. How does that practically force a new theory?
Well, it requires their internal research teams to actively seek out technologies and mental models from entirely different industries. They force, say, a packaging expert to collaborate with a chemical engineer and someone from the automotive industry.
So, wow.
When those differing mental models collide, they are forced to make abductive leaps, generating plausible theories about how a material used in car manufacturing could create a breakthrough in consumer packaged goods.
But cross-industry innovation takes time to figure out. I mean, if I have a wild theory about using automotive tech for a new shampoo bottle and my boss demands a positive ROI report by the end of the quarter, my theory is dead on arrival. The data won't support it yet.
This is why the creation of protected spaces is the second critical pillar. Breakthrough theories need a shield from standard, short-term ROI metrics until they have time to mature and generate their own validating data.
A shield from the data.
Yes. Alphabet, Google's parent company, structures this brilliantly with their Other Bets portfolio. Companies like Waymo, working on autonomous vehicles, or Verily in life sciences, are intentionally separated from Google's core ad revenue metrics.
Because if Waymo was judged by the same metrics as Google Search, the data would say it's a massive failure, and they would kill it before the autonomous driving theory ever had a chance to actually work.
Precisely.
The source also talks about Bell Labs historically doing this. They didn't evaluate research proposals based on commercial probability or market data. They evaluated ideas based on theoretical elegance and scope. And that protected space gave humanity the transistor and the laser.
It really did.
But, okay, in tech or science, a theory might result in a physical prototype you can eventually measure. What if your company produces something entirely subjective? How do you test a theory of entertainment or art before it's released?
That brings us to how Pixar handles organization-wide theory literacy through their brain trust.
Right.
When Pixar's directors and writers review a film in development, they aren't looking at market data, focus group testing, or algorithm predictions. The brain trust evaluates the theoretical coherence of the narrative.
Theoretical coherence.
Yeah. Does the character motivation logically connect to their actions? Is the world building theoretically sound within its own rules? They are collaboratively testing a theory of human emotional engagement without a single data point.
So what does this all mean for you as a listener? If you are tuning in right now and you want to start evaluating your team's theories tomorrow morning, let's say you are pitching a completely new asynchronous remote work model for your department. How do you know your theory is actually good before you have the data to prove it?
Dr. Westover provides a highly actionable rubric for this exact scenario, featuring 6 explicit criteria for evaluating a theory. Let's apply it to your remote work pitch.
Okay, let's do it.
The first criterion is novelty. Does this asynchronous model suggest operational possibilities that simply aren't captured by your current hybrid schedule?
Got it.
Second is logical coherence. Are the causal mechanisms clear? For instance, does removing mandatory meetings logically force better written documentation, which in turn actually speeds up project delivery?
So I have to be able to map out exactly why the change causes the benefit. What are the next criteria?
The third is scope. Does this theory just fix one annoyance for a single team, Or could this model scale to transform the productivity of the entire company?
Okay.
Fourth is testability. Even if we don't have the data now, is there a way to run a 30-day pilot program to gather the initial empirical feedback?
Right. You still have to test it eventually.
Exactly. Fifth is generativity. Does this idea spawn further innovation? Perhaps realizing we can work entirely asynchronously sparks the idea to start hiring top talent globally across different time zones?
I love the generativity aspect. It's not just about solving the immediate problem. It's about whether the theory opens up new doors we couldn't even see before. And the final criterion.
Competitive distinctiveness.
Mm.
Is this a structural shift that our competitors are unlikely to pursue because they are too glued to their traditional productivity data to take the leap?
Wow. Novelty, logical coherence, scope, testability, generativity, and competitive distinctiveness. We break it down into a concrete pitch like that, it really exposes how modern corporate culture inadvertently crushes innovation. We demand immediate empirical justification. We want the data first, which means ideas that score high on novelty and generativity get killed in the cradle just because they haven't happened yet.
This raises an important question, right? The profound paradox here is that as AI systems become exponentially more powerful, this corporate brittleness will only intensify. AI's extraordinary capacity for pattern recognition makes it incredibly powerful at optimizing known solutions. But when the underlying patterns in the market inevitably shift, the AI fails. It cannot envision a solution space that hasn't historically existed in its training data.
AI and big data are brilliant at optimizing the past, but human abductive reasoning, our unique ability to observe anomalies, connect disparate concepts, and build explicit theories of value before the evidence exists, that is the only thing that creates the future.
Absolutely. The ultimate application for the listener, whether you are evaluating a multi-million-dollar venture capital investment or just trying to pitch a better way to run your weekly stand-up meetings, is to force a shift in the conversational mindset. We have to stop exclusively asking, what does the data say? And start demanding, what is our theory?
That is such a powerful framework for organizational change. But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over, building on everything we've just discussed about competitive stasis. We've talked extensively about how massive companies optimize themselves into irrelevance by safely following historical data. But zoom in and think about your own career for a second. Are you making data-first decisions about your life? Are you just optimizing the historical data on your resume, taking the safest next step that your past experience dictates? Or are you operating theory first, envisioning a completely novel future for yourself that no past data could ever predict, and building the causal mechanisms to get there? If artificial intelligence is actively taking over the data analysis and the optimization of our past, maybe your personal theory-first imagination is your ultimate irreplaceable career advantage.
The most enduring competitive advantage for a company or an individual is the ability to conceptualize what the data cannot yet show.
So the next time you find yourself staring at a dashboard of metrics, feeling perfectly secure in the numbers, remember, you might just be staring into the rearview mirror. Keep your eyes on the winding mountain road ahead, question the data, and start dreaming up the theories of tomorrow. We will catch you on the next deep dive.